Welcome to Dirt Magic, a podcast chronicling the Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship's mission of building sustainable recreation-based communities through stewardship, job creation, and world-class events, providing quality outdoor experiences through trail construction and maintenance in the Lost Sierra. I'm your host, Martin Scheel. On this episode of Dirt Magic, we take a virtual stroll through a historic recreation area, the Lakes Basin, located in the Plumas National Forest of Northern California. With over 20 small lakes, impressive peaks, 30-plus miles of trails, waterfalls, picturesque campgrounds, and historic lodges, the Lakes Basin Recreation Area is a crown jewel in the Plumas National Forest. And now it is ever more important to talk about keeping these epic trails open for all of us to enjoy. Joining me on this episode of Dirt Magic are three historical figures themselves. They are purveyors of fine single-track and have decades of experience when it comes to building and maintaining trails. Please welcome SBTS Executive Director Greg Williams, SBTS Master of All Trades Marc Cosbey, and SBTS Pro Trail Crew Boss Henry O'Donnell. Well, gentlemen, welcome to Dirt Magic. You know, when I think of the rock, dirt, and water foundations that our epic Lost Sierra is composed of, it's hard not to think about Greg, Cos, and Henry when it comes to the foundations of the SBTS. Over 20 years of working on the trails from Downeyville to Mount Huff and beyond. And one of those areas, which I mentioned earlier in the show, is the Lakes Basin. And Greg, the recreational description I spoke of at the beginning of the show gives folks a good reason to visit this iconic area. But there's a much deeper history to the Lakes Basin area. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, before the gold rush, the Maidu and the Nisenan and the Miwok tribes frequented the area and developed some of the original routes through the basin. And like Long Lake Trail they think was probably the oldest trail there, and it connected right over the crest of the Sierra there between Mohawk Valley, which is like where Gray Eagle is, and the Yuba River watershed. So you can, if you're adventuring around up there, you can oftentimes see petroglyphs. Sometimes you'll find an arrowhead, but the area was frequently visited by the indigenous people. And then during the gold rush, more trails were put in to access the mines, and they were mainly pack mule trails that were put in, very steep, very rugged, oftentimes just from point A to point B. So there was no recreation in mind when those trails were developed.
With that, I mean, obviously the area that has, a lot of water, significant amount of lakes, I imagine during the gold rush, well, and for the prehistoric times as well, all those lakes, rivers, and streams, as well as surrounding, probably provided for quite a bit of food and resources, not only for indigenous people, but for the gold miners.
Oh yeah. I mean, that area was heavily, the lakes, obviously had fish in them, and the animals all frequented that area for the water. So yeah, I'd imagine it was prime hunting grounds in that area.
When it came to mining, how would the Lakes Basin compare to, say, like the Downeyville area?
Yeah, I think it was just like an extension of it. They were finding big nuggets, and I think Cosbey maybe has a story about Gold Lake and how there was kind of like a legend about that lake, I think, in the Gold Rush era.
It's interesting because it is in fact called Gold Lake. So Cosbey, little story on Gold Lake.
Well, evidently there's a story that's kind of been going around that some of the first gold miners that came up into that area kind of wanted to draw people away from where they were actually really finding gold. And so they kind of put out a story that like this lake up in the basin was just like there was just gold lying around, like on the shore everywhere. So a bunch of people went there to try to find it. But I mean, there's gold there, but it's not like the story goes. I think it was a diversion tactic by some
nuggets running rampant. Just show up to the shoreline, find your gold nugget the size of a baseball.
Yeah, just walk along the shoreline and pack your bag. But that's one of the stories that's kind of going around up there, was going around up there. So kind of interesting. I've never found any like giant nuggets, and I've been up there for like 35 years almost. So
Well, it's interesting too, and it's a great recreation area, and a lot of good trails. But Greg, as you were mentioning, many of those trails were definitely not designed for recreation. They were designed for pack mules, probably more as straight as line as possible to get to the mining area or your camping area for all the hard work to be done. But as you were starting to work on the Downeyville Trail system, along with Cosbey and others, even pre-stewardship, and as we entered the stewardship era, you guys made your way up to Lakes Basin, and kind of give us a little history of why and how, and the what that brought you up to this area from Downeyville.
Yeah, well, I had my shop in Downeyville, and I met Cosbey he was a customer, and just would come down, and I'd see him, quite a bit throughout the summer, and he ended up inviting me up to Gold Lake for a barbecue and a bike ride before the barbecue, and I think that was probably my first ride in the basin. Really, was with Cosbey. We pushed our bikes a lot. I mean, any ride in the basin is, you're taking your bike for a walk and enjoying the views and the swimming. And we'd always say it was like dog miles. For every mile, it felt like 7 miles. But yeah, my introduction to the basin really was through Cosbey, and I think Henry's introduction to the basin was, I think I took him on his first bike ride there when he was about 13 or so, maybe younger.
Henry?
Yeah. I'd been in the basin a little bit before that, just through a Wilderness Challenge youth program. They had out of Downeyville, and we'd hike into some of the lakes. We would go kayaking in Gold Lake a bunch, because it's easy to drive to. But definitely my first bike ride was with Greg. I probably was about 12, and I just remember parking at the Lower Graygle Creek trailhead, and we just went from there. And I remember pushing my bike a lot, especially going uphill on anything. But it was all a lot of fun to descend. And from riding in Downeyville, it's rocky and rough too. But you get into the basin, it's a little different animal. So it was good. I honestly. As I got better at riding, the basin was always my favorite place to go ride, because none of it is built, for mountain bikes. But it was still really fun to ride, but you get a good challenge out of it.
And Cosbey, Greg mentioned, you had some history with the Gold Lake area. So what brought you to that area? I mean, obviously, I think out of this group, especially, I know before me, you were in Gold Lake long before I ever was enjoying the trail. So what brought you to the Gold Lake area?
Well, I had a friend who owned he was a part owner of a boat that I sailed on for quite a while, and he's a developer in San Francisco. So he called me and told me that he had just bought this property on this place called Gold Lake up in the basin, and that they were going to build some log cabins up there. And he wanted to know if I'd go up there and help. And I was just coming off a job where I was working for an America's Cup team, Italian America's Cup team, down in San Diego and in Italy. And so I said, yeah, I'll come up and have a look at it. He bought the property from the Boy Scouts. It was a Boy Scout camp. And before that, it was a PG&E vacation spot for employees. So he bought that property, brought another friend of his in as a partner. And so we ended up building a log cabin up there, pretty much right on the lake. And that kind of introduced me to that area. So like working for this guy on his boat kind of ingratiated me to that property. And over the course of like the last amount of time through the years, we built another log cabin that was about 3,000 square feet. And then we built another smaller cabin. It wasn't a log cabin. So there's 3 families that I work for up there that I caretake that property for.
I was going to say, yeah, you're still directly connected. I mean, even as we speak, I mean, you're kind of the purveyor of Gold Lake when it comes to keeping the cabin safe and the snow removed when it's time.
Yeah, I'll be back up here pretty directly. Henry and I went up there a couple of weeks ago just because I was concerned about some downed trees on buildings, but everything was good. And yeah, I'll be up there hopefully in the next couple of months. So back at it.
Nice. Well, it's definitely beautiful up there, and yeah, I recommend anyone, if you look up Lakes Basin, look up lodging, cabins, resorts, you're gonna find a handful of awesome locations up there to visit. So make those reservations early because they're popular. It's a popular area for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of families that have been going to those resorts up there for 50 years.
Yeah, generational. Yeah, for sure. Well, with that, it's a great area to explore. Obviously, by boat, relatively easy to get to once the snow starts melting. But the trail system up there, is epic. I mean, you can get as lost as you want to be on the trail system, or you can stay relatively close to quote Lost Sierra civilization. But the trail system itself for hikers, equestrians, and mountain bikers needed some attention early on. And what was the 3 of you riding up there in those early days? What was the spark? What was the click? And Greg, maybe you can speak to this one first, on the work that needed to be done to make the trails maybe a little more accessible for folks and for mountain bikes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the basin hadn't really received any maintenance for years and years. So there was a lot of just loose rocks. Again, there was, a lot of just taking your bike for a walk because the trails were just in disrepair. So, it was a year or so after we had started the stewardship. I had moved over to near Gray Eagle in Clio and started riding the basin a lot more, and went into the Forest Service district office there and in Gray Eagle. It's called the Beckworth Ranger District, and met this woman, Judy Shaber. She was the recreation staff officer, and said, "Hey, we'd like to help on a couple of trails." So the first trail that we ever worked on was Gray Eagle Creek Trail, and it was kind of this complicated turnpike project that Judy just had like a printout of directions and ordered a bunch of materials, and I think we had probably like 30 people for the first work day in 2005 on that trail. So once we did that and kind of built that relationship with Judy and the ranger district there, we started doing a lot more work up there and trying to get the trails just really so that people would stay on the trails for one thing. The trails were just kind of chewed up, so people were kind of go wherever they wanted. Some trails had been kind of long forgotten and unusable. So yeah, I was really just trying to keep access and keep people on the trails as well.
And who, obviously you and Cos were probably a big part of this too. And Henry, when did you, those early days, I know with the stewardship too, you're up in the forest and you were doing some logging, and you're probably getting pretty close to some of your racing days too. But what are your first days that you remember up working in the basin?
I really started working in there like 2009, I think it was, and that's when I came back to the stewardship full time after logging for a few years. And at that time, the main project we started on was the Long Lake Connector, which goes around the east side of Long Lake. And, but we were kind of bouncing around doing some brushing and log out, just trying to take care of the whole system. But that Long Lake Connector had more or less, there was kind of like a fisherman's trail along the shore where you could follow the shoreline and make that connection over to the Long Lake Trail. But then we established a new route in there that, yeah, that was more of a permanent system trail.
And I know the the Long Lake Trail itself too. Is there's some interesting work that was done on that your transportation wasn't typical transportation to get to work. And I don't, Cosby, you want to comment on that one, because it wasn't riding a bike or a moto or a crew truck to necessarily get to the work site. So what'd you take?
Yeah, well, we had a friend of ours. He donated a little boat, aluminum boat, to us, and I think it was a 10 horsepower. What was it? Yeah.
It was little. I think it was only like a 5-horse to be allowed.
Hey, well, it wasn't that little, because like packing it in there on my back wasn't so great.
Yeah, there's a bit difference from a 5 and a 10 horsepower motor, especially back in those days.
The way it felt like 100 horsepower. So, but he donated this little aluminum skiff to us, and it had a shark face on the front of it, which was cool. And we would go across the lake from the Long Lake Trail, connector trail that Henry was talking about, and we'd go across the lake, and there's some private property like directly across the lake. It's a cabin that's been there, I think, since like the 30s or 40s, and it's been one family that owns that. But we were able to dock the little boat over there, and then we'd go up and work on the connector up to Elwell and Mud Lake and down into there, and up actually to the PCT. So we started working on all that trail. We built a new trail up there. And that's actually, when we were doing that, that was the first, we started kind of getting sophisticated, because we started doing a lot of blasting kind of for the first time. And and we actually got some grants to get some tools. We started using a grip hoist a lot to move big stones. And so that was kind of cool. We kind of introduced ourselves to some new techniques, and yeah, we really learned a lot up there, actually.
And you mentioned Elwell and Mud Lake too. Now, the work that was done in those, was a lot of that work done via the boat, getting there via the boat as well?
Oh yeah, that was all via the boat. I mean, we would ride our bikes in there on occasion, but it was just a lot faster to get in there on the boat and take tools over and stuff like that.
Plus, we could troll across the lake on our way to work.
I was just going to say, there's some good fishing opportunities as well. Yeah, you can never pass up a fishing opportunity.
This is a good story. We trolled Henry one day. He wanted to get towed by the boat. Well, no. He goes, "I'm going to swim back," and I go, "Oh, really? Okay, good luck with that." And he started out strong, but like not even halfway across the lake, he goes, "Okay, I'm done." And so I just threw him a rope and pulled him, just drug him through the water, like face first, till we got back over to the dock. Yep. But
that was a volunteer day on the Mud Lake Trail.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of tools and volunteers. Like, the boat was overloaded to begin with. And so, I've never tried to swim that far, and I did not make it.
What was the water temp, do you think, during that time?
That lake stays cold.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've never put my feet in it and felt, wow, this is warm and cozy.
It's good swimming. I mean, when it's summertime, it's a good swimming lake. But that was good times.
It's probably a good thing that all those OSHA requirements, the statute of limitations, have worn out on those, so we're no longer liable.
Especially the blasting.
We probably shouldn't even go into that. We'll probably start twisting up some people if we talk too much about that. Well, Greg, when it came to those trails, I mean, and we'll get to Smith Creek, because that one's got a really good story too. But between Long Lake, Round Lake, Elwell, and Mud Lake, what was the decision making, and obviously funding was not like we have it now, or previously, where there were grant monies coming in and private donations. But what was the impetus to take a look at those trails and go, okay, what was the first one to say, hey, we need to fix this to make it better. If we fix this, we're going to get more people up here and have more fun.
Yeah, I think the funding back then was coming through. It was a program called Secure Rural Schools, and it was federal funding that would come into the county, basically in lieu of the Forest Service or feds like paying property tax or producing any timber off the forest. So they started new subsidies for rural counties, and so we applied for some funding in Plumas County, and we got it. And the first trail that we really were funded to work on was the Bear Lakes Loop, which is probably one of the more popular loops that you can do in the basin. It's a couple miles, but it goes by like Big Bear Lake, Little Bear, Cub, and Long Lake. So a lot of lakes just kind of right in that zone. So that was kind of like one of the bigger first projects that we had, and then we kept going after that same funding source. And again, we still had that really good relationship with the Beckworth Ranger District, and so we kind of just started working, one trail at a time and trying to, do a lot of watershed protection too. Like these trails were in pretty bad shape. So a lot of the rock armoring that Cosbey was talking about, and Henry, placing rocks in areas so that it was, basically safer. And like that Long Lake Trail, like we basically like restored that whole thing, which was pretty cool because it had been kind of forgotten and people were just kind of bushwhacking to kind of get through. So being able to establish that route again was pretty special.
And Henry, what do you remember about those days working up in that area? I mean, a lot of that stuff up there, I mean, it seems like it's almost solid rock.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of it is, but if it's solid rock, that's great. The water can't really erode it too quickly. But a lot of our erosion control is focused on, the spots that still had a dirt tread and doing whatever we could do to keep that dirt in the trail and divert the water away from it. When I came back to the stewardship and started working steady up there, a lot of it was just Troy, Cosbey, and I. And I think we had a couple really good seasons up there. And I would ride my bike in and out of work every day that I could because I was still enjoying that a lot. And yeah, we learned a lot, kind of self-taught, different stone masonry techniques. Knew a little bit, but things start evolving. When you're moving 100 to 500 pound rocks around all day, you learn how to work smarter pretty quick.
Yeah, and I encourage folks too, if you monitor our social media, our Facebook and Instagram, for the Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship, in our current promotional campaign that we've got going right now, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on the show. But you're going to probably see some short videos and some photos of rock movement. And when Henry mentioned, 500-pound rock, that's not exactly, you don't just get 5 or 6 guys to try to grab this thing and flip it over and roll it. I mean, it's literally being hoisted from one location to another location via cables, line, very, very specialized equipment. And I imagine, well, first you got to get the equipment in there. So no matter what, you're humping it in there. But two, that's some specialized trail building techniques. And I think when people see the size of some of the stones that you guys have moved on the trails over the years, it's pretty impressive what you can do literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and the grip hoist and a few pulleys, just learning some basic rigging techniques went a long ways with that. But we also had to have anchors, or something to tie that stuff in, and we'd always call it like a high line with the grip hoist, but we're only getting the rock usually inches off the ground, just high enough to move it. And there are like tripod options, so you can get elevation on that cable without trees or some other sort of anchor, but we never ended up building any of those. We were able to use a motorized wheelbarrow as well that I mean, that wheelbarrow is still alive and I don't know how, but we would beat the living crud out of that thing, moving rocks around and all our tools.
We still have that one?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a testament to construction.
Yeah.
For sure.
Too bad we don't have a sponsorship from Honda, because I do like their products.
Yeah, they're pretty proud of them this day and age. That's for sure. All their products, for that matter. So, one of the things that was mentioned, throughout the trail building was staircasing, or the ability when on some steeper sections, especially when it comes to rock, allowing a mountain biker to climb while still in the saddle, whereas otherwise you would almost certainly have to push your bike. So, Henry, maybe you could help us kind of elaborate on staircasing.
Yeah, I mean, after a handful of regular staircases, we started trying a technique where you'd have a slope to a step, then another slope and a step, so you're not having that vertical face of a stair when you're trying to climb it. And some of them worked out pretty good. You still got to be really aggressive on a bike to make it up them. But we were also trying to do our work to fit the equestrian use as well. And I know we built a couple sections where, equestrians would pass through as we're working on it, and we'd try to get their input, and they'd be like, yeah, it'll work, it'll be fine. And then, you go out there a couple of years later and all the equestrians are going around it. And myself not being an equestrian, I didn't realize that at the time, but that's a really tricky part in there with all the rock work, because a lot of horses can get up to 2,000 pounds or just shy of, and so there's a lot of leverage on a really small pressure point. When they put one foot down on the edge of a rock, they can flip over a really large rock or knock it out of the trail.
Yeah, that's something to think about when you're thinking about multiple trail users, and when you add a horse, into the mix, and the pounds per square foot, that they're pushing, more beyond just a human walking or someone rolling. It definitely takes some very unique construction techniques. And again, still out in the middle of nowhere. This isn't something you can just pull up with a whole bunch of tools and heavy equipment and unload it off the trailer and get the work done. This is this is a whole lot of elbow grease, blood, sweat, and tears. Getting tools in there and getting the work done. Sometimes the bike, the boats, the powered wheelbarrow aren't enough to make something happen. You're going to come across a particular trail. There's a ravine, there's a crossing, there's a waterway that's just not going to be handled by what's available to you on the mountain. And, Greg, Cosbey, and Henry, I'm speaking of the Smith Creek Trail, and a new type of tool had to be used for some work done on this one. I don't know, Greg, if you want to start on that one and kind of give us the scoop on the Smith Creek Trail and a new era for some stewardship work.
Yeah, we put a bridge in up there, and it was had to be engineered. But the bridge wasn't assembled, so it came in pieces from Oregon. So I trucked it down from Oregon, and then we had to get a forklift basically that could handle it. So that forklift came out of Reno to meet the truck, unloaded it, and then we had to get a helicopter I think it came out of Red Bluff, that came in and picked up the materials in lifts and flew the bridge up to near the site. But before we could have the stuff delivered, we had to drop several trees to kind of create like a landing pad where we could put the materials down on skids. And to get up there to do that, we had to rebuild the Smith Lake Trail with the excavator to get the excavator up there. It just turned into a pretty major project, when really we could have just had a couple of big rocks that people would hop across the creek. But I think it was an experience, super stressful flying that stuff in there. But Henry and Cosbey, I think, worked on that project most of the summer with this guy, Bob Hale, who was a trail builder extraordinaire and just like a character. But yeah, we got it done. And again, Henry and Cosbey spent many months up there assembling that.
So, in the days of hard hats, thinking of a limb coming off a tree, or, someone, kicking up something with a Pulaski or McLeod, and, the hard hat bouncing it off and keeping you safe. But boy, a helicopter with a long line with thousands and thousands of pounds of materials over your head. I mean, Cosby, what was that like knowing you got a pilot up there, wind conditions, thermals, and a whole lot of heavy materials that are coming in that basically you guys are putting into a landing zone. So boy, what kind of experience was that? Was that first time ever dealing with something like that?
Well, I dealt with some helicopters before. I worked in Forks, Washington in the 70s, and they would fly us uh, into the forest because there was no roads or anything. So you'd sit on a cable, you'd sit on a ring that was hooked to a cable that was hooked to the helicopter, and you'd have your saw and all your tools hanging off a utility belt. So I was kind of familiar with helicopters from that. And so we were able to communicate. We all talked about what the plan was down at the loading zone, and we, like Greg said, we had prepared a landing spot. We had skids set up to put, because we weren't going to move the beams for this bridge uh, real easily. So we had to line everything up to just slide them down on some skids right where they were going to go. So it was a learning process. I think we did a pretty good job. It was fun because it was in a beautiful place, but I've got some really cool pictures of Henry fallen trees on a plank, up high on a plank, falling trees, and yeah, we learned a lot on that job. So it was good. I think it was a little bit of overkill, but like Greg said, we could have rolled a couple rocks in there and it had probably been okay. But it was good. I liked it. It was a good project.
Well, I think that bridge is still looking pretty good to this day.
Yeah, last time I checked, it was
It's not
looked
going
okay.
anywhere.
It's definitely not going anywhere. Well, Henry, for you, was this post your logging days when the helo was coming in?
Yeah, and logging wise, it never worked around helicopters. That was really my first experience like that. And our prep work, I had to drop a few snags. So prop wash wouldn't knock them over, cables wouldn't get hung up in them. But then the staging area where they landed all the supplies for the bridge was basically a rock pile. So then we laid out a bunch of logs from those trees I cut for the lumber to construct the bridge, to land on that and not get broken or banged up when it got set down. And then Cosby mentioned, me falling a tree off of planks. The first and only time I've ever dropped a tree off of springboards, and is mainly to leave us um, an anchor point to get lift on moving the materials. The tree was in a spot where it had to go to make things safe for the helicopter, but it was in a good location, for an anchor to then get winches and cable on the big stringers for the bridge and pull them in. So wasn't even that big of a tree, but I was, like 8 feet off the ground to fall it.
All kinds of different techniques coming into this one. Greg, on this one, I mean, the just the work alone sounds expensive. I mean, materials for a bridge, literally almost in the middle of nowhere, sounds expensive. But when a helicopter's flying, I know for a fact that there's nothing cheap about a helo going anywhere. And yeah, was this still part of some of that grant funding? Or, I mean, this is like exponentially more expensive than, riding a moto in with some tools.
Yeah, this was money that we got through. I think it was like the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, part of a grant that we got there. But it was really to put people to work locally, and we ended up spending, almost $200,000 on a bridge versus putting a bunch of people out making paychecks. So it was kind of a bummer. It was cool to do that project. Like, it was our first kind of bridge project like that, but just the amount of resources that went into it, and like the helicopter bill was like $22,000. I mean, it just got like crazy. So, but it's not going anywhere.
That is for sure. Well, and Henry, now with current, building, um, trail building specifics, rules, regulations, would this be something, and nothing against the bridge. I mean, it's there. It was a done deal. Like you said, a really cool project, a learning experience all around. But if there was a similar scenario, is it something where that's the pathway that would have to be taken, or are there ways in that very same similar situation with Smith Creek that you could do, like Greg mentioned, with doing some rock work and finding a way so that water can still flow, everything's still natural, but without trying to bring in man-made objects and the expense of that to the trail?
Yeah, and I mean, even then there were probably some options, and there are now. It that kind of varies district to district among the forest between who you're getting to sign off on it. But like we mentioned, just large stepping stones in the creek were an option that was feasible, or using lumber, using timber on site. If you're somewhere you can find cedar or good wood that's going to last, you could simply just make a single log stringer bridge or mill materials on site. But it going with a bridge like we did, those kit bridges are really large glue lambs for the main stringers. You basically have a guaranteed 50+ year lifespan on the materials. So you cover all your bases there, and if you're going to put the effort into it, you want it to last as long as you can.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's going to kind of swing us into our next area. Greg, currently in the Lakes Basin area right now, how many miles of trails, or maybe Henry, you may have to answer this too, that do we maintain annually, or would we like to maintain annually?
Yeah, I think it's upwards of like 20 miles.
Yeah, for the basin proper, yeah, just shy of 30 miles, including that system, and then we have Mills Peak right next door, which isn't like in the heart of the basin, but it's right there as well. And we're our main focus for the last few years in the basin has just been kind of log out and brushing, cleaning drainage, and taking care of the infrastructure that's there. We haven't done any major projects in a while in the basin.
On average, when we look at our maintenance costs, per trails per foot, and if you average it out over all of our trail system, the 300 rough miles that we maintain annually as the Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship, it can be $3,000 a mile, to maintain. I imagine in the Lakes Basin that could get a little more expensive because more rock, less materials to work with, and the Lakes Basin, and Greg, currently it's multi-use, but non-moto and non-e-bike, correct?
Yeah, it's hiking, biking, and equestrian.
So that takes out the California OHV funding, and we've been fortunate enough to receive grant funding from that program for some years now, and it's a successful program, and we greatly appreciate it, especially here in the Mountain Huff and in the Downeyville system. But Lakes Basin's unique to where that funding isn't available for us up there, obviously, because it's not OHV, and with grants, issues that we're dealing with now, Greg, what type of situation, are we in? I mean, first of all, prior to even our current freezes and the federal issues and grants, is it, how have we funded Lakes Basin, in the past? What's been our successes and what's been our challenges?
Yeah, well, those original funds that we would get, basically don't exist anymore. And then, getting the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds, like that was a one-shot deal as well. I think we have gotten a little bit of, I think they labeled it as stimulus. So some funding that came in like during COVID. But really we've been kind of just self-funding our work out in the basin, partnering up with some of the lodges to do some little fundraising efforts, which is what we currently have going. But really it's been us just spending our own money out there in partnership with the forest to try and keep those trails open and to keep the water clean up there. So
So, currently we have our Adopt a Trail program, and folks, if that's something that you have not heard of before, if you have and you want some more information on it, if you go to sierratrails.org and click on what we do, you'll see Adopt a Trail, and that's one of the ways that organizations, private individuals, companies can help maintain these 20 plus miles in the Lakes Basin area, and it's literally funding that gets raised that goes directly to our trail crew to literally put boots on the ground, volunteers as well. Of course, volunteerism when we have our trail work days in the Lakes Basin. Yes, the trails are a little bit more difficult to get to, but we still have a good time. And boots on the ground, our volunteer army is super important. And especially with lack of grants and our current situation, we've got some federal freezing on funding, and a little bit of uncertainty on how our government partners and our awesome Forest Service partners will be progressing forward with their crews out working on the trails. So, it really comes to private funding. And, post COVID, the stewardship has gotten better at that. And Greg's been a champion along with many of those that have helped him and helped us, put our hand out and ask for bigger sums of money, because we certainly need it, because these are our trails, your trails. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of money to keep them open and keep them safe. And we currently have a promotion, and it's the first time we've ever done it. Most of our promotions have been bicycle related, giving away a bike, a mountain bike, or motorcycle. But we're doing a little something different up in this area in partnership with the lodges. And Greg, you mentioned it quickly, so why don't you just kind of just give us a really brief overview of our current promotion?
Yeah, it's part of our $5 a foot campaigns that we've been doing, I think, for, I don't know, over 10 years. For sure, we've been involved with these campaigns. But the idea is, like, in the beginning was basically it would cost around $5 to build a foot of trail, which those costs have obviously gone up. And in the basin, it can be upwards of like, $100 a foot, depending on how big a rock Henry has to move to get to that foot. So yeah, we have a campaign going in partnership with the lodge up there at Gold Lake, some overnight stays, and basically just trying to partner with the businesses that rely so heavily on the trail system to get their customers more engaged and really raise money so that we can keep our crews going in the Lakes Basin. Now that the Forest Service, it looks like they're not going to have a trail crew working in this zone going into 2025. So really the kind of responsibility is a little more weighted onto us. So we're going to have to take matters into our own hands and raise some money and keep our crews going out there so that when people show up on vacation to hike and bike these trails, they're fun and safe.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep those open. I mean, for those of us where that's our backyard, it's awesome knowing that we can take our families up there and really enjoy the Lost Sierra. Get as lost as you want and found at the same time. And of course, too, having responsible outdoor recreation. And when Greg mentions us, that means you folks too that are listening. I mean, those are our trails. It's public lands. They're our trails. And it rests solely on our shoulders, at least for this year, to keep them open. So we always appreciate your support. And if you'd like to learn more about this promotion, just go to sierratrails.org, and you'll see it there on the main page. And your donation could not only get you into a pretty sweet prize package and a couple nights stay at an awesome lodge, some good food, good product, but it also helps keep our trail crews working. It also helps put our volunteers, put boots on the ground and the tools up in the Lakes Basin to make those trails safe. It's a higher elevation area, and Gold Lake Highway is the main access there, and it's closed historically during the wintertime, and some deep snows can happen on there. But when that spring thaw starts happening, our crews will be ready to get out there and get cracking on those to get them open and safe for all of you to come up and enjoy that area. And speaking of enjoying that area, Henry, what's your favorite trail in the basin?
I like them all, but you can't really beat the Elwell descent. It's descending from the top of Elwell all the way down into Gray Eagle is it's got to be a world-class descent. And there's no way to shuttle it, which I think is great. So no matter how you do it, you got to climb a couple thousand feet at least to get up there.
you definitely got a mountain goat, but the payoff is good. And boy, some of the most spectacular views you'll see from up in that area as well, for sure. Cosby, your favorite trail up in the basin?
Uh, yeah, that's a good one. I maybe Oakland Pond over to Elwell, go up to Round Lake and get up to Oakland Pond Trail, descend over to the kind of the overlook of Long Lake, and then up to Elwell, and then the descent. That's a big day.
Yeah,
So,
that would be. Greg, your favorite trail up there?
Yeah, I mean, Elwell's always a favorite. I would say like Jameson is an all timer, which is, you can, when you're over on the top of that, you can actually drop towards Downeyville via Lavazola, or you could drop into Spencer Lakes if you head south, or you can go to the north there and then drop into Jameson and go by Rock Lake and Wades Lake, and you pop out into Plumas Eureka State Park at the bottom. So definitely a classic with a bunch of rock work and some staircases that you can either ride down or jump over.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful area, and it's an area you can go out for a few hours, all day, or even a few days. And as I mentioned before, you can get as lost as you want out there, and may not even see another soul, whether you're on your hooves or you're rolling. But it's definitely a beautiful area. Any shenanigans from those trail work days up there? I know you mentioned Troy, and I know Bill was up there too. But there's any shenanigans, some good zingers up there that we need to know about from working up in those days? Any unintended overnight stays?
No, I don't know. Not really shenanigan, but we did a stringer bridge on Jameson Creek that I remember the morning of first hiking all our gear in there really well because Greg and Cos had a really long night the night before. And
And a long night of working, you mean? Because that's what you're insinuating.
But that was a good project, and it was just the three of us hiking in there to start it, and yeah, I guess that's all I need to get.
Yeah. You'll stop right there. Cosby, anything come to mind?
that was a good one. When we were doing quite a bit of blasting in there, I remember one day we were really close to the dam on Long Lake. Well, it was a course of a few days, but we did some serious blasting and kind of surprised ourselves a little bit. Or maybe
that's the nice way to say it.
Yeah. Instead of saying scared, I'll just say surprised. But that was good. I mean, so many good times up there. This one deal though kind of sticks out is like we were redoing the Long Lake trail, and we had just gone through and just pimped it out like it was so nice. And then Henry went back to, I think, get something, a tool or something, and somebody had drug a bunch of tree limbs and rocks, and like the trail that we just pimped out all of a sudden had all this shit on it.
Oh, no.
And Henry was like, what the heck is going on here? And so like he came back, he told me, he goes, somebody's like sabotaging us. And so we went back and we actually found the guy, and he was with his wife and his two kids, or maybe two kids. And this guy was so mad at us for like doing trail work because he said God intended to have the trail, that we shouldn't do any trail work because God built those trails. So it was like, wow, really, man? And it turned into a little bit of a boondoggle with this guy. But Judy Shaber, who was the ranger, she had to go kind of confront this guy and go, hey, you know what? You can't be doing this. Like, this is like a forest. This is the forestry project. And yeah, you can't do it. So that was one little kind of trippy experience.
You never know who you're going to meet out on the trail.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Willie, any zingers you can remember or don't want to remember?
Yeah, I mean, that was a funny one. Just, again, meeting up with that guy because he had his kids like rolling rocks in the middle of the trail. We had just worked on, I don't know. I mean, you look back, it's like it's been, 20 years of projects up there, and, working and playing, and just, it's such a special place. I feel like for a lot of people, the reason they live in that Gray Eagle area is because of the access that the basin provides. And the fact that you can ride your bike through there is pretty unique situation. Yeah. And just so many volunteer days, and, like honing our skills, like with our grant writing, to our relations with the Forest Service, to techniques that the crews developed out there. It's a time machine.
Well, I think that's a good way to slowly end this conversation, and definitely I concur 100% with that. It really is a magical place, and a lot of learning, blood, sweat, and tears, and boy, kids growing up, kids being born, kids getting old enough to be out and use the trails and even work on the trails. And the Lakes Basin is certainly a spectacular area, and we want to keep it that way for all of us and for you out there in listener land. And so please, by all means, whatever you can do to help, we greatly appreciate it. You're helping us, which means you're helping yourselves, and our accolades become your accolades, successes as well. And let's keep the beautiful Lakes Basin Trail System open for all. And again, visit sierratrails.org and check out everything we do. There's plenty of ways to help, and we love seeing folks out swinging tools with us. So stay tuned for those as well when we get some boots on the ground. And Henry, Cosbey, Greg, thank you guys, so much for being on the show today. But more importantly, Cosbey, 20 plus years ago, thanks for taking a young Mr. Williams up into the Gold Lake area for a ride, and sparked a whole new trail system that the stewardship has become partners with. And Henry, from a preteen to a teenager, now to our trail crew boss as well, to be able to grow up in that area and actually have it be part of your education, in school before you even graduated high school, to be in that area is pretty impressive as well. And now you're maintaining it for other youth and kids to do the same thing that come out of the Gray Eagle and the Downeyville area. And yeah, guys, hey, thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate it. And for all those out in listener lands, let's keep these trails open and maintained. The snow's melting, although we got a little bit coming in this week, but normally we'll all be looking forward to the Gold Lake Highway opening back up and getting to our beautiful Lakes Basin trail system. So, hey guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
All right, you guys, thanks again. And a final reminder, folks, your support is the key ingredient to keeping the Lakes Basin trails open and safe to enjoy for the 2025 season. So please visit sierratrails.org and click on the Lakes Basin Stay and Adventure promotion and help the SBTS keep making dirt magic. You've been listening to Dirt Magic, the podcast, brought to you by the good people of the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship. For future and past shows, visit dirtmagicpodcast.com or search for us on your favorite listening platform. Music by The Saddle Tramps. To learn more about supporting the SBTS and upcoming events, visit sierratrails.org. I'm Martin Scheel, and I'll see you out on the trails. Thanks again for listening.